Hi guys, my name is Melody and thanks for stopping by. Now today's video I'm going to talk about moving through grief. The reason for me making this video is this weekend will be what was going to be my dad's 69th birthday, and 4 days after is the 9th anniversary of his death. Now I'm going to talk a bit about my dad. I'm not going to go into too much detail because that would make this video super long, probably like 3 hours. And I know that people don't have that much attention span to hear all my stories. But what I would like to start out with is I'm going to talk a bit about my dad himself and the last year of his life, and what led up to his dying, and then I'll talk about how we have coped with that. I say we as a family because it is a we situation and not just a me situation. Now, my dad was a very strong man. He was from Tennessee. He had many jobs. One, I thought he was job ADHD because he had so many jobs. He also had various hobbies as well. His most favorite of all hobbies was motorcycles. He traveled through all 49 continental US states, not including Alaska or Hawaii, but he did go across 9 provinces of Canada with my mother on the back of his motorcycle. So I grew up being picked up from school on the motorbike and everything like that, which was extremely embarrassing at the time, but now that I think about it, that was actually probably really cool. He was also quite a loving man, but he grew up in like a time where discipline was harsh, so he was a disciplinarian, and he was just like my dad. I was just case I think I was a real daddy's girl, because when I asked him for something, I pretty much got it, except if it was too expensive. I would also say that I look a lot like my dad. I have his massive forehead, however he was bald, and I have a similar shaped nose and things like that. And if I do those stupid turn yourself into a man face things, then I kind of look like my dad, which is very creepy. But he was highly involved with charities as well. I mean, he did have a temper, but a lot of that was due to a car accident he had where he had a frontal lobe injury, and this wasn't picked up for many years. But that all got straightened out, and we were best being in separate houses because me and my dad were, my mother says, too similar to be in the same house. And I was a bit of a wild child as well, so that's the case. But to be honest, I really loved him, or I still really love him, and I miss him dearly, and he was just a great person. So what I want to discuss now is the last year. So in his early 50s, I think maybe late 40s, he gotten type 2 diabetes. He was quite ill to begin with. He also had 3 heart attacks and I think about 8 stents put in his heart. He had degenerative arthritis, as well as blood leukemia that he was receiving treatment for, sleep apnea. So he was very ill. He was quite disabled. My mother took early retirement and partial retirement, then early retirement, to take care of him for that time period. Now, this is actually the last time I visited Georgia, which is where I'm from. This was 9 years ago when I went to see my dad for the last time. We had visited Georgia because my son was born in April and the July, and my dad wasn't up to his usual self. He had knee surgery and he was just getting able to walk again and not have to use his wheelchair so much, and we thought he was going to get better from then. my son was his first grandchild that was a boy. Well, to be honest, both my children are his first grandchildren, and he absolutely doted on him. We could count on him if he ever needed anything, or if we were short on cash, he would send money or things like that. And he just basically dote on his grandkids as well, and they get pretty much everything they probably didn't want or didn't need, but he would like to buy them things, which was nice. We went over and we were having a holiday there. We went to Memphis, where my dad was from. We went to see my grandmother's grave, which I had never seen because I hadn't been back to Memphis in quite some time. But he didn't go out with us as much as he used to. He was constantly sleeping and things like that. And I would just like put it up to all the other problems that he had as well. But normally he would be a case of like, oh, it doesn't matter, I'm just going to go out and do things. Like he would still go out camping and all that. But it just stopped, really, at that point. I do have one of the last pictures I did take of him. And that's in the Atlanta airport, and that's with him holding his grandson. The reason why I was so excited is because his family on his side was pretty much all girls, except for my cousin. So he was just excited to have a boy in the family, which was really nice for him. Now, I didn't think that picture would be the last picture I took of him. He did, however, which maybe was foresight, but I don't think he knew. But that year he had gone and bought a plot in the cemetery on a hill facing the mountains, which he would love to ride. He'd love going riding in the mountains on his motorbike, like pretty much every Sunday after church, or Saturdays, or sometimes he'd just get up and take us everywhere. Like we would go on these trips, but never to the beach or to like your normal holiday places, always to like historical places or places that interest him. The mountains were a big part. We always go to the North Georgia mountains, the Smoky Mountains and things like that, Blue Ridge and all that. And that was just what he enjoyed. So he bought this plot, these two plots that came available in the cemetery because he thought he had to grab them up so that he would have the perfect view of the mountains. He had also bought a tombstone, which he took us to go see. My daughter did cry at that because she didn't want to think of him dying, because she loved her papa. But he had bought it and it was already sitting there engraved, just waiting for him. And I think he bought it in the February, and this was in the July. So the November after that, he had had his other knee surgery and he was at home recovering. And what he did was he lifted himself up with his arms and he broke his shoulder. Now, my dad had never broken a bone in his body. He had really strong bones. And he broke the bone in his shoulder and he was taken to the hospital to get that set. When they went to the hospital, they found out it was cancer. And he had no idea. He had never gotten tested for cancer, even though he had that blood leukemia, because the leukemia bit is a different sort of thing. It wasn't attacking, so that's not the root cause of what causes cancer. We don't know what caused his cancer because by the time they found out, it was absolutely everywhere. I don't know. I had already told him to check himself because 2 years prior, my aunt had died from breast cancer. And that was something that was quite difficult on him because my aunt practically raised him because she was the oldest and she was basically taking care of him while my grandmother either worked on the farm or was working at other places. But yeah, she had died of cancer 2 years before. My uncle also had cancer, but he did survive, so he was treated and he is still alive now, which is good. But it was a case that they just didn't know. I don't know how much I blame the U.S. healthcare system for that because he was being treated for leukemia, but yet he had all these symptoms. But I mean, they could have passed it off as symptoms for other things, which was quite bad. No, it was the end of November, so it was just before Christmas. So so he went into the hospital that day. He never left the hospital. He got, they said that they wanted to do radiotherapy on him and things like that, start chemo, but that never happened. I don't know why that never happened. I don't know if it would have prolonged his life because they said the cancer was absolutely everywhere by this point. By Christmas, he was gone downhill. The reason why we know this is because he stopped liking the things that he loved, like technology. My dad was a real big technology buff, so I always loved the new gadgets, but he told my mother to get him a phone that only called and received phone calls, no texts, no pictures, nothing. On Christmas Day, it was snowing that year in Georgia, and my mother wasn't able to make it off the hill where she lived because it's a steep hill, and they didn't have a 4-wheel drive, so she couldn't come to see him. But I called him, and he was complaining at me because my mother didn't come to see him, but she was there every other day. She was always there for him. The funny bit is when they got married in the 70s, they knew each other for 1 month and got married, and they were married for almost 40 years. She just wanted to make it to her 40th wedding anniversary, which I think would have been the following year. I'm really bad at their anniversaries. I missed their 30th, my bad. But anyway, so that was the case. Then January went by and we were still talking, but he wasn't there. It must have gotten to his brain by this point. Still no chemo or anything. I think they were just preparing him for hospice. So it got to, well, my mother kept saying that they were going to do it, but they just never moved him out, snow or whatever. I don't know what was going on. I don't really trust the American healthcare system, but that's another point. And I have other reasons for that as well. But it got to, which would have been this week, 9 years ago, and I got a phone call saying that you need to come home. And they were saying that your dad won't make it a few more days, and I spent pretty much all the money on my credit card, took a flight home. I was there for, let's see, what was it? I got there the Thursday. I went up to see him as soon as I got there, straight off the plane. My mother's friend drove us up to the place he was at, which was probably about 3 hours away driving, maybe 2.5. Because it was quite north of where they lived, because that was the only treatment place. So I spent that evening with him, seeing him, got off. Then the Friday, we went and stayed with him all day as well. Might have been Wednesday night, and then Friday. I think I might have left Tuesday because we get there. We go back in time. I can't remember, to be honest, because I'm sure I spent 2 days sitting with him, 2 or 3 days. And I remember, like, he wasn't talking. He was basically gone. And I had kind of made my peace with that, but not really. But he passed away on the Saturday night when nobody else was there. This seems to be a trend in our family, that they'll hold on till everybody goes home and then just pass away in the night. I don't know why I said this, but when my mother told me, I think it might have been shock. I don't know, but I was like, yeah, that's fine. Or that's good, or something to that extent. I think I might have been in shock about that. I'm not sure what I was feeling at that point, but I know that I didn't really cry because I think I cried so much on the plane over and like before and everything like that, that it was numbness at that point. Yeah, we went and that evening, and we never went back to the hospital, but they took him down, and we had to go to the funeral home and get everything sorted out. But being the foreplanner that he was, he'd already picked out his coffin as well, in a lovely shade of gold. The same gold that both the cars were in, the motorcycle, and pretty much, oh, and the boat that we had when I was little. Everything that he bought was in the same shade of gold. I think it was his favorite color. So he also said he wanted this coffin before. So we didn't really have much to do, to be honest, for that. I remember the viewing was there was a lot of people there, because he was just friendly with everybody. I don't think he ever met a stranger, because he just talked to everybody. I remember going to Edinburgh Castle with him once, and I'd walk, and I'm walking three foot ahead of him. I know he walked slow because he had health problems and he had a stick, but I'm walking 3 foot in front of him because he never met a stranger, and he's just talking and asking questions to everything. But I guess that's the case, that he just wanted to learn more things. And he was a typical loud American as well, where my mother's more quiet, which is amusing. But in the viewing as well, that was the most funny part, is he had a smile on his face. And we asked the undertaker, which was one of his friends as well, because like I said, he never knew a stranger, and it's a quite small town, if he did that. And he said no, that he came there like that. So it was like he was peaceful, and he was just smiling away, and it was great there. The funeral was an experience. My dad always used to tell my mother if he died first, he was going to haunt her and play jokes on her. The day of the funeral, he used to do the sound and the video in the church. And that morning, they couldn't get it to work. It just wouldn't work. It was just that nothing they would do. There was no problems with it. It just wouldn't work. It eventually started working, but they said it probably was a joke from him as well, which was quite amusing. So the funeral was quite good. I got a CD to bring back to my husband, because they never got to the funeral because he couldn't get time off of work, and didn't want to take 2 small kids back over on that long plane journey, because it's like about 9 hours, possibly more, because there is a connecting flight in Amsterdam. Yeah, I stayed there for 4 weeks, and then I came back and I was here. And I stayed off of work another week because I had some holiday to take, so I was off of work for 5 weeks for that. I never really broke down though. Oh yeah, another funny thing about the funeral is I had fell like the week before on ice, and I had a massive black eye, and my dad would have thought that was absolutely hilarious, because he used to laugh at the silliest things. I once got a speeding ticket, and I was like really upset, didn't want to tell him. And I called him, and he's like, well, you shouldn't have let him see you. And that's what it says, even though he was a police officer. So that was a bit weird. Anyway, yeah, so I was off for 5 weeks. And it doesn't really hit you as such sometimes. Sometimes you do go through the angry stages, but I think for my part, I did so much, and I helped my mother so much, that I wasn't like extremely upset, because I knew by December that he was pretty much gone. Like, his personality had left, in the same way that we saw my aunts go. Because I remember him saying that he went and sent her flowers, and she told the nurse she didn't like flowers, even though it was her favorites. And that's kind of like what happened to him as well. It was the same thing. And it was like that they're gone already, but you're not there. Cancer is a horrible, horrible thing. Since then, I've done a lot of runs for cancer. And I've raised money for the charities here in the UK, and I have sent money to the States for that. I tend to, but what I really think is I listen to a lot of Peter Mon videos, and there is one thing is you don't get over something, and I hate when people tell me to get over my grief for my dad because it's been so long ago. I don't get over it. We just move through the grief, and you remember the happy times and the times that you've spent with that person. And you remember the joy that you had and the good times, such as like the one time when my husband was that we went over to America. This was before my son was born. My dad's driving the car and he sees a bear on the side of the road. So he goes a wee bit past it, but then he stops and he backs up and he opens the window so you can get a picture of this bear, and it's a mama bear with a cub, and you don't mess with mama bears and cubs. And my husband's in the back of the car freaking out because he's opened the window, which kind of reminded him of that time that his granddad and grandma opened the window in the lion thing in the safari park drive-through bit. But like, he used to do that stuff. And then like the first time my husband met him, there was a rabid animal in the back of the yard, and he had to go shoot it before it got to the dog, and my husband woke up because gunshots, and I was just sleeping, and my dad comes through there with his gun, and he's like, "You all right, son?" And my husband, who was from the UK, never seen a gun. It was like, "Okay, yeah, I'm all right." That was, yeah, they're just like good memories like that. And a lot of times what I tend to do every day is I kind of think about him every day, and things like what he would like and that, because I have so many stories from him and so many memories that it's something that I am not forgetting who he was or what he was like. I'm taking those forward. A lot of times as well as I think that when I was younger, I used to say that my parents were wrong about everything. I kind of realized that a lot of times they were right. And although I'm not one for like spanking children or anything like that, I do get what he says about it, and a lot of times I think that the punishments I did get were well justified because I was not the best child. But I take the memories, the happy and the sad, and I carry them with me. And I carry my dad with me. And when I go up driving in the Highlands here in Scotland, and I see a road, and I think that looks like a motorcycle road, and he would have loved that. And me and my husband, we do this thing, and he because my dad used to do this. It used to be like, he had a motorhome that they bought. It was a really nice one, kind of expensive as well. Because I came home one Sunday and was like, "What did you buy?" And he's like, "We bought a motorhome and we're gonna be out traveling. See you later." And he traveled with this motorhome with the motorbike attached to the back and a trailer and all this stuff. And they just leave, and we're like, "Well, that's nice." And they go to Disney World and things like that. And I see that, and me and my husband goes, that's a motorhome, Carol," because my dad used to do that all the time to my mother, so my husband does it to me. I think it's affected my husband a little bit more because he never got to go to the funeral. I did bring a CD back with the funeral on it, and he did get to listen to it, so that's kind of some closure. But there's not a lot there. Unfortunately, at the moment, we're not in a financially enough place to visit America or go back to Georgia to spend time at the grave or anything like that, because I'm currently going to school and we're kind of sort of on one income for the most part of the year, and then I work during the summer. But I carry a lot of things with me. I've got his necklace that had his medical necklace that he used to wear all the time because he had diabetes, fall risk, and all that stuff. And it says his name on the back, and I wear that when I go and do a run. I'm doing a run on the 1st of February, and I will wear that because I keep my dad with me for luck. I also wear it when I go take exams as well, or if there's anything important that I need to, I wear it under my top as well. I carry a picture of him everywhere I go. It's on my phone. It's traveled from many phones now. Probably about, what was it, 9 years? So probably about 4 or 5 phones. I transfer this picture to every phone because I carry my dad with me. I still have my mother. My mother is an incredibly strong woman. She's like a phenomenal person and has helped a lot. And I appreciate her support. We talk every Saturday on Skype. We used to do that when my dad was alive. We'd talk every day on Skype, 6 o'clock every Saturday. And we still do that with my mother. And she's been over here since my dad's passed as well. But I wish I had half of her strength when it comes to things like these, because I know if I lost my husband, I wouldn't know what to do with myself. But he was a brilliant person, and I am upset that he is missing his grandson's grow up, because he's so much like him. Because my dad could talk for everyone, and my son does the same as well. He talks for everyone. And cancer is a horrible, horrible thing. And what I would suggest to everybody is to make sure you check yourself for any lumps or bumps or anything that's unusual, spots, skin, anything. I would also like to say that never forget anybody who has left you, especially if those people are the most important people in your life. Don't take someone for granted. I know I did when I was younger, because I took for granted that my dad would always be there and that I could be a little horrible person. And make sure that you remember them and you honor them in things that you do, and that they're never left by your side. My daughter has fond memories riding ponies and things like that with her papa. And sitting on his scooter wheelchair thing as well, that he had to do when he couldn't walk. We have those memories. But if I look at my son, he looks pretty much exactly like my dad when he was younger, except he's got like the eyes of my husband so much, so like the shape is just ridiculous. But he looks so much like my dad when he was that age. I do feel sorry for him. He will be bald. But yeah, just remember to spend as much time as you can with loved ones, and don't get over the grief. Move through it. Remember them always. I don't know if I'll make another video this weekend. I might do a nail tutorial, but I'm not sure. But if I don't, I will see you next week. And I love every one of you. And hug your loved ones and keep them close. And just remember that they'll be with you always. Thank you. Bye.